Have you ever worked somewhere for so long that it started to feel like home, where you knew every corner of the building, every quirk of the coffee machine, every face in every department, where you poured everything you had into your work because you believed it mattered? I did for 7 years. 7 years of early mornings and late nights. 7 years of missed dinners and canceled plans. 7 years of believing that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded. And then one day, it all came crashing down, not because I did something wrong, not because I failed at my job, but because someone decided I was expendable. My name is Michael Tors, and this is the story of how my boss destroyed my career. And how I eventually bought his company and fired him back, but in getting ahead of myself, let me start at the beginning. I was 26 when I joined Harmon Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm in Chicago. It wasn't a Fortune 500 company, but it was respected in the industry. They specialized in business strategy and operational consulting for manufacturing companies. I started as a junior analyst, entry level, the kind of position where you do all the grunt work and hope someone notices, and I worked hard. I mean really hard. I was usually the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I volunteered for the projects nobody else wanted. I studied our clients' industries on my own time. I made myself indispensable. Within 2 years, I was promoted to senior analyst. A year after that, associate consultant. By the time I was 30, I was a project manager leading my own teams. I was good at what I did, really good. My clients loved me. My teams respected me. I had a track record of delivering results that exceeded expectations. And I thought I had a future there. I thought I was building something. The company was run by Gerald Harmon, the founder. He was in his late 60s, semi-retired, and mostly hands-off. The day-to-day operations were managed by the coup Richard Brennan. Richard, even saying his name now leaves a bitter taste. Richard was in his mid-40s, MBA from a prestigious school. 20 years of corporate experience, polished, articulate, the kind of guy who looked good in a suit and knew exactly what to say in every situation. But underneath all that polish was something else, an ego that needed constant feeding, a need to be the smartest person in every room, and a complete inability to handle being challenged or questioned. I didn't see it at first. When Richard joined the company as coup about 3 years into my time there, I actually thought he was impressive. He talked about growth strategies and efficiency improvements. He had big plans for expanding the business. He seemed like someone who could take Harmon Associates to the next level. But over time, I started to see the cracks. The way he'd take credit for other people's ideas. The way he'd throw team members under the bus when projects didn't go perfectly. The way he played favorites, promoting people who flattered him rather than people who actually did good work. Still, I kept my head down and focused on my job. I told myself it wasn't my problem, that as long as I did good work, I'd be fine. I was wrong. The problems started about 6 months before he fired me. I was leading a major project for one of our biggest clients, a manufacturing company that was struggling with supply chain inefficiencies. It was a 6-month engagement worth almost $2 million. We were 3 months in when I discovered something. The strategy Richard had sold to the client, the one he'd personally pitched and promised would solve all their problems, wasn't going to work. The data didn't support it, the assumptions were flawed. If we implemented his plan, it would actually make things worse. I knew I had to say something, so I scheduled a meeting with Richard. I prepared a presentation showing the data, the analysis, the problems with the current approach, and an alternative strategy that I believed would actually work. I thought I was being helpful, I thought he'd appreciate that ID caught the problem before it became a disaster. The meeting was just the two of us in his office. I walked him through everything, the flaws in the original plan. The risks, the better approach. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So you're saying my strategy is wrong? I'm saying the data suggests we need to adjust our approach. That's not what you said in this presentation. You said my assumptions were flawed. I'm not trying to criticize. I'm trying to make sure we deliver the best results for the client. He leaned back in his chair. Let me tell you something, Michael. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've worked with dozens of companies like this client. I know what works. I understand that. But the data can be interpreted in different ways, and you're a project manager, not a partner. Your job is to execute the strategy, not question it. I felt my stomach tighten. With respect, if we implement this plan as is, it's going to fail. And when it fails, it's going to hurt the client and our reputation. His expression hardened. Are you telling me how to do my job? I'm trying to help us avoid a mistake. No. You're trying to make yourself look smart by making me look stupid. And I don't appreciate it. That's not what I'm doing. This meeting is over. Implement the plan as designed. That's an order. I left his office feeling shaken. But I couldn't let it go. I knew I was right. I knew the plan would fail. So I did something that, looking back, was probably a mistake. I went to Gerald Harmon. The founder was rarely in the office anymore, but I managed to schedule 15 minutes with him. I showed him the same analysis I'd shown Richard. Gerald listened carefully. This is good work, Michael. Thorough, and you're right. There are some concerning assumptions in Richard's approach. So you'll talk to him. Get him to reconsider. Gerald sighed. Richard is the coup. I brought him in to run operations because I trust his judgment. If I start second, guessing him on every project, what's the point of having him? But this isn't about second guessing. This is about making sure we do right by the client. I hear you, and I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. But I'm going to defer to Richard on this one. He knows what he's doing. I left that meeting feeling defeated. But I told myself I'd done all I could. I'd raised the issue. I'd shown the data. It was out of my hands now. I implemented Richard's plan, and exactly like I predicted, it failed. Not immediately. It took about 6 weeks for the problems to become obvious. But when they did, they were catastrophic. The client's supply chain got worse, not better. Costs went up. Delivery times increased. They were furious, and Richard blamed me. In a meeting with the client, with me sitting right there, he said the implementation had been flawed, that I hadn't followed the plan correctly, that I'd made decisions without consulting him. All lies. The client believed him because he was the coup and I was just the project manager. We lost the account. $2 million gone, and Richard made sure everyone knew it was my fault. A week later, I was called into his office. Michael, we need to talk about your performance. My performance. You cost us our biggest client. That's unacceptable. I implemented your plan exactly as you designed it. The plan that I told you wouldn't work. That's not how I remember it. And frankly, your attitude has been a problem for a while now. My attitude, you're combative. You don't take direction well. You think you know better than everyone else. That's not true. It is true, and I've been documenting it. Has a file. My heart sank. You've been building a case against me. I've been documenting performance issues. That's my job as coup. This is about the fact that I challenged you, that I told you your plan wouldn't work, and I was right. You're proving my point right now. You can't accept feedback. You can't work as part of a team. I've been working here for 7 years. I've led dozens of successful projects. My reviews have always been excellent. That was before I was cool. Things are different now. He slid a folder across the desk. This is a separation agreement. You're being let go, effective immediately. We're offering you 2 weeks severance, which is generous considering the damage you've caused. I stared at the folder. You're firing me. We're ending your employment. I suggest you sign the agreement. If you don't, we'll terminate you without severance. This is retaliation. I did nothing wrong. You're welcome to consult an attorney if you feel that way, but I assure you, everything has been done by the book. I should have fought it. I should have hired a lawyer, filed a complaint, made noise, but I was in shock, and honestly, I was humiliated. I signed the agreement. I packed up my desk that same day. 7 years of work, of relationships, of building something, reduced to a cardboard box of personal items. My team was devastated. Several of them tried to argue with Richard on my behalf. He shut them down. One colleague, Sarah, pulled me aside as I was leaving. This is wrong. Everyone knows this is wrong. It doesn't matter. You should fight this. I'm tired, Sarah. I just want to move on. Where will you go? I don't know. I'll figure something out. But the truth was, I had no idea. I went home to my small apartment and sat on my couch in silence. I'd given 7 years of my life to that company. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, personal time. And it had all been taken away because I'd dared to tell the truth, because I'd bruised Richard Brennan's ego. The anger came later, not that day, not that week, but slowly, as I processed what had happened, the anger started to build. I started looking for new jobs, but word had gotten around. Richard had made sure of it. Had told other firms that I was difficult to work with, that I'd caused a major client loss, that I had performance issues. I couldn't prove it, but I knew, because every interview I had would go well until they called Harmon Associates for a reference. And then suddenly I'd get a polite rejection email. 2 months passed, then 3. My savings were running out. I was applying to jobs I was overqualified for, just trying to get anything, and I was angry, so angry I could barely sleep. I'd lie awake at night replaying conversations with Richard, thinking about what I should have said, what I could have done differently. I'd think about how unfair it was, how Head lied and faced no consequences, how Head destroyed my career to protect his ego, how he was probably still there, still taking credit for other people's work, still ruining lives, and somewhere in those sleepless nights something changed. I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I started planning, not revenge exactly, at least not at first. Just a way forward, a way to prove that Richard Brennan didn't get to define who I was or what I was capable of. I started small. I reached out to former clients I'd worked with, people who knew my work. I told them I was doing independent consulting. A few of them hired me, small projects at first, nothing glamorous, but it was work, and it was mine. I worked out of my apartment at my kitchen table, sometimes 18 hours a day. And slowly, very slowly, I started to rebuild. But I never forgot what Richard did to me, and I never stopped thinking about Harmon Associates, about the company I'd given everything to, about the people still there, still working under Richard's management, about what it would take to make things right. I didn't know it yet, but that question would consume the next 5 years of my life, and it would lead me down a path I never could have imagined. The first year on my own was brutal. I was doing independent consulting, which sounds professional, but really meant I was scrambling for any project I could get, working alone with no team, no infrastructure, no safety net. Some months I made decent money. Other months I barely scraped by, but I kept going because the alternative was admitting defeat. Admitting that Richard had been right to fire me, and I couldn't accept that. I worked with former clients who remembered me from Harmon Associates, small manufacturing companies mostly, the kinds of places that couldn't afford big consulting firms but still needed help with strategy and operations. The work was good, challenging, and I was good at it, but I was lonely. Consulting at a firm, even with all its politics and problems, meant being part of something. Working with teams, having colleagues, now it was just me and my laptop and my kitchen table. I'd go days without talking to anyone except clients on phone calls. My social life disappeared. I'd lost touch with most of my friends during my years at Harmon Associates because I'd been too busy working. And now I was too busy trying to survive, but I kept going. And about 8 months in, something happened. One of my clients, a small automotive parts manufacturer, was so happy with my work that they recommended me to another company. And that company recommended me to another. Suddenly, I had more work than I could handle alone, so I hired my first employee. Well, contractor technically, David Chen, a young analyst I'd known from my time at Harmon Associates, had left the company about 6 months after I was fired, sick of Richard's management style. We met for coffee, and I explained what I was building. "It's not much yet. I can't pay you what you were making, but if you're interested in building something from scratch, I could use the help." He didn't even hesitate. Having David changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. We worked well together. He was smart, hardworking, and most importantly, he believed in what we were doing. Over the next year, we grew. We brought on 2 more people, then 3 more. We moved out of my apartment and into a small office space. We weren't competing with the big firms yet, but we were building a reputation. Companies that worked with us told other companies. Our client base grew, and I realized something. I was building exactly what I'd always wanted Harmon Associates to be. A place where good work mattered more than politics, where people were valued for their contributions, not their ability to flatter the boss. Where integrity meant something. By the end of year 2, we had 12 employees and steady revenue. I named the company Tours Consulting. Simple, straightforward, it felt right, but even as we grew, I never stopped thinking about Richard Brennan. I'd see updates about Harmon Associates occasionally, industry news, LinkedIn posts. Richard was still there, still cool, still running things. And according to what I could see, the company was struggling. They'd lost several major clients. Employee turnover was high. Their reputation in the industry wasn't what it used to be. Part of me felt vindicated. See, I wasn't the problem. He was, but another part of me felt sad, because there were good people still working there. People I'd cared about. And they were suffering under his leadership. Sarah, my former colleague had tried to defend me, reached out about a year and a half after I'd been fired. We met for lunch. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Better than I expected. I started my own firm." I heard, "That's amazing. How are things at Harmon Associates?" She sighed. "Honestly, not great. We've lost 3 major clients in the last year. Morale is terrible. Half the people I started with have left. What about Richard?" Still there, still making the same mistakes, still blaming everyone else when things go wrong. And Gerald, doesn't he see what's happening? Gerald barely comes in anymore. He's basically fully retired. He trusts Richard to run things. That's unfortunate. The thing is, Michael, people talk about you, about how you were right about that client project, about how Richard set you up to fail. Everyone knows what really happened. Does it matter "Im's still gone. It matters to those of us who are still there. We know you got screwed." We talked for another hour. About work, about life, about what we'd learned. As we were leaving, she said something that stuck with me. "You know what the worst part is. Harmon Associates used to be a good company. It used to mean something, and Richard is destroying it piece by piece." I drove home thinking about that. About the company ID loved, about the work we'd done, about what it had become, and an idea started forming. Not fully formed yet, just a whisper of possibility. What if I could fix it, not by going back as an employee, but by taking control? I pushed the thought away at first. It was too big, too ambitious, too unrealistic. But it kept coming back. Year 3 of Tours Consulting was our breakthrough year. We landed 2 major clients, the kind that changed everything. Real revenue, real growth. We hired aggressively, bringing in top talent. By the end of that year, we had 35 employees and offices in 2 cities. We were becoming a real competitor, and I started hearing things from clients, from industry contacts, about how Harmon Associates was losing business to firms like mine, how their clients were unhappy with the quality of work, how people were leaving to join competitors. I didn't take pleasure in it exactly, but I noticed. I also started researching the company more seriously. Financial information, ownership structure, client lists. Gerald Harmon still owned the majority of the company. Richard had a small equity stake, maybe 5%. The company was private, so detailed financials weren't public, but based on what I could piece together from industry sources and public filings, they were struggling. Revenue was down, profits were down, and Gerald was getting old. He was 73 now, no kids. No obvious succession plan beyond Richard. An idea that had been whispering became a voice. What if Gerald wanted to sell? What if I could buy it? It seemed impossible. I'd only been running my own firm for 3 years. We were successful, but we weren't that successful. I didn't have the capital to buy a company like Harmon Associates, but I couldn't let go of the idea. I started running numbers. What would it cost? What was the company actually worth? Based on their revenue and the industry multiples, probably somewhere between $10 and $15 million. I had maybe $500,000 in assets, and that was mostly tied up in Tours Consulting. There was no way I could afford it. Unless I could find investors, I'd never raised outside capital before. Tours Consulting had been grown organically, funded by revenue. But if I wanted to do this, I'd need to learn. I spent the next 6 months educating myself, reading about private equity, mergers and acquisitions, leveraged buyouts, talking to people in my network who had experience with this stuff, and I started putting together a plan. Not just to buy Harmon Associates, but to turn it around, to restore it to what it had been, to build something better than what Richard had destroyed. The plan was ambitious, maybe crazy, but the more I worked on it, the more convinced I became that it could work. I just needed one thing. Gerald Harmon had to be willing to sell. In year 4, I made my move. I reached out to Gerald through a mutual contact. Not about buying the company, not yet, just to reconnect. We met for coffee. He looked older than I remembered. More tired. "Michael, good to see you. I've been hearing good things about your firm. Thank you. We've been fortunate and talented. Don't sell yourself short." We talked about the industry, about clients, about changes in the market. And then, carefully, I asked about Harmon Associates. "How are things going?" He sighed. "Honestly, not as well as I'd like. We're managing, but it's been a challenging few years. I'm sorry to hear that." "It's the nature of the business. Ups and downs. How's Richard working out?" Gerald paused. "He's competent. He knows the business, but I sometimes wonder if he has the right instincts for where the industry is going. He's very focused on the way things have always been done. Have you thought about succession planning? About what happens when you're ready to fully step away? I think about it all the time. I don't have children. This company is my legacy, and I want it to go to someone who'll take care of it. Have you considered selling? He looked at me carefully. Are you asking as someone who's curious or as someone who might be interested? I took a breath, both. We talked for another hour. I didn't make an offer. I didn't push. I just planted the seed, let him know that ID built something successful, that I understood the business, that I cared about his legacy. As we were leaving, Gerald said something that gave me hope. You know, Michael, I never agreed with the way Richard handled your departure. I thought it was short-sighted. I appreciate you saying that. If you're serious about this conversation, let's talk again. Soon. Over the next 3 months, I had several more meetings with Gerald. Each one went deeper. We talked about vision for the company, about values, about what made a consulting firm truly excellent. And I could see that he was tired of fighting to keep the company afloat, tired of watching Richard make mistakes, tired of worrying about what would happen to his legacy. Finally, in a meeting in early December, he said the words I'd been waiting for. I'm ready to sell, and I want to sell to you. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of timeline are you thinking? As soon as possible. I'm 74 years old, Michael. I don't want to drag this out. What about Richard? Have you talked to him? Not yet, but he won't like it. That's an understatement. Gerald smiled sadly. Probably, but this is my company, and it's my decision. We shook hands, and I walked out of that meeting, knowing my life was about to change completely. Now came the hard part, actually making it happen. Buying a company sounds straightforward until you actually try to do it. Then you realize it's one of the most complex, stressful, all-consuming things you'll ever attempt. I spent the next 4 months doing nothing but work on the acquisition. First, I needed money, a lot of money. Gerald and I had agreed on a purchase price of $12 million. A fair valuation based on the company's current state, maybe even slightly generous given their recent struggles. I had about $500,000 in liquid assets, which meant I needed to come up with $11.5 million. I started with banks trying to get a traditional business loan. 3 banks turned me down. The 4th was willing to lend me $4 million, secured against both Harmon Associates' assets and my own company. That left $7.5 million. I turned to private equity. I talked to dozens of firms, most weren't interested. Too small a deal, too risky, not their focus area, but eventually I found one, a mid-sized PE firm that specialized in professional services companies. They agreed to invest $5 million in exchange for a 35% stake in the combined company. That left $2.5 million. I convinced Gerald to take part of the payment as a seller note, essentially a loan that I'd pay back over 5 years. He agreed to $2 million, which left $500,000. I put in everything I had, cleaned out my savings, mortgaged my apartment, borrowed from my retirement accounts. It was terrifying. If this didn't work, I'd lose everything. But I'd come too far to stop now. The legal work alone was overwhelming. Due diligence, purchase agreements, employment contracts, non-compete clauses. I hired lawyers, accountants, consultants. Every day brought new complications, new problems to solve. And through all of this, Richard had no idea what was happening. Gerald had decided to wait until the deal was finalized before telling him. I don't want him interfering, Gerald explained. Once everything is signed, it'll be too late for him to stop it. I understood his reasoning, but it made me nervous. Richard wasn't stupid. If he found out before we closed, he could cause serious problems. The closing was scheduled for March 15th. About 4.5 years after Richard had fired me, the week before closing, I barely slept. I kept thinking something would go wrong, that a bank would back out, that the P firm would change its mind, that Gerald would have second thoughts. But everything held together. On March 14th, the day before closing, Gerald finally told Richard. He called him into his office and informed him that he was selling the company to me. I wasn't there for that conversation, but Gerald told me about it afterward. Richard was furious. You're selling to Michael Tors, the guy I fired for incompetence. He wasn't incompetent, Richard. You fired him because he challenged you, and you were wrong. This is insane. The coup. I've been running this company for years. If you wanted to sell, you should have sold to me. You don't have the capital to buy it, and frankly, I'm not confident you have the vision to run it long term. So you're selling my job out from under me. I'm selling my company to someone I trust to preserve its legacy. Richard threatened to quit. Gerald told him he was welcome to leave, but there would be no severance beyond what his employment contract required. Richard stayed, but Gerald warned me that he would be a problem. On March 15th, I signed approximately 200 pages of documents. And just like that, I owned Harmon Associates. Well, technically a holding company, ID Created owned it, and I owned 65% of the holding company. But for all practical purposes, it was mine. I was now the owner and CEO of the company that had fired me 4.5 years earlier. And Richard Brennan still worked for me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I scheduled an all-hands meeting for the day after the acquisition closed. The entire company, about 60 employees, gathered in the main conference room. I stood at the front, looking at faces I'd known years ago, and many I didn't know at all. Richard sat in the back, arms crossed, glaring at me. I took a breath and began. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Tors. I worked here for 7 years before leaving about 4.5 years ago. Yesterday, I completed the acquisition of Harmon Associates. I'm now the owner and CEO. A murmur went through the room. I know this is unexpected. I know some of you have questions. I'll do my best to answer them. But first, I want to tell you why I bought this company. I paused. When I worked here, this was a place I was proud to be part of. We did excellent work. We treated clients with integrity. We valued each other. But over the past few years, I've watched from the outside as that culture eroded, as good people left, as clients became unhappy, as the company's reputation suffered. Another pause. I didn't buy this company for revenge. I didn't buy it to settle scores. I bought it because I believe it can be what it once was, and am committed to making that happen. What does that mean for us? Someone asked. It means changes. It means we're going to rebuild this culture. It means we're going to focus on doing excellent work and treating people well. It means if you're here because you care about those things, you have a bright future. And if you're here for other reasons, you probably won't be happy. I looked directly at Richard. It also means that leadership is going to change. Some people will have new roles. Some people will be asked to leave. Those decisions won't be personal. They'll be based on what's best for the company going forward. The meeting lasted another hour. People asked questions about job security, about benefits, about the vision for the company. I answered as honestly as I could. When it was over, Sarah came up to me. I can't believe you actually did this. Neither can I. To be honest, what happens now we rebuild. Richard didn't speak to me that day or the next day, but on the third day, he came to my office now. The office that used to be Gerald's. He stood in the doorway. Can we talk? Of course. Come in. He sat down across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I know why you're doing this, he finally said. Why am I doing this? To humiliate me, to get back at me for firing you. Is that what you think? What else would it be? I leaned back in my chair. Richard, I bought this company because I saw an opportunity to build something meaningful. Your role in that is honestly secondary. So you're saying firing me isn't your main goal? I'm saying that what I do regarding your employment will be based on what's best for this company, not on personal feelings. You're going to fire me. I haven't decided yet. Yes, you have. He stood up. Just do me the courtesy of being honest about it. Okay, you're right. I am going to let you go. He nodded slowly. When, end of the week, I'll give you 3 months severance, more than you gave me. How generous. It's not about generosity. It's about doing things the right way. He walked to the door, then turned back. You know what? You deserved to be fired. You were arrogant. You thought you knew better than everyone else. I was right about that client project, the one you blamed me for, maybe, but you weren't right about how you handled it. You went over my head. You undermined me. I tried to save the project, and you made it about your ego. Everything is about ego, Michael. You're about to learn that. He left. And I sat there for a long time, thinking about what Head said. Was he right? Was this all about ego? About proving I was better than him, about revenge disguised as business strategy? I didn't know. On Friday, I called Richard into my office and formally terminated his employment. I gave him the severance package, 3 months' salary, continuation of health benefits, a neutral reference letter. He signed the papers without argument. As he was leaving, he said one last thing. Good luck, Michael. You're going to need it. And he walked out. I sat in my office afterward, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, vindication, joy, but I just felt tired. I'd spent 4.5 years building toward this moment. The moment when I could fire the man who'd destroyed my career. And now that it had happened, it felt hollow because I realized something. Firing Richard didn't change what had done to me. It didn't erase the pain, the humiliation, the months of struggle. It didn't give me back those 7 years I'd invested in this company. It was just over, and now I had to figure out what came next, not revenge, something harder. Actually running this company, actually rebuilding it, actually proving that I'd bought it for the right reasons. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of whiskey, thinking about everything that had led to this moment, and I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The first 6 months after acquiring Harmon Associates were the hardest of my professional life. Harder than getting fired, harder than starting tours consulting from nothing, harder than raising the money to buy the company. Because now I had to actually make it work. I'd bought a struggling company with a damaged reputation, unhappy clients, and a demoralized workforce. And I'd taken on millions of dollars in debt to do it. If I failed, I wouldn't just lose my money. I'd lose everything I'd built over the past 4.5 years. Tours Consulting, which Wed merged into Harmon Associates, would be gone. The people who'd trusted me, who'd followed me, would suffer. The pressure was enormous. I started by talking to everyone, every employee, every major client, every key vendor. I needed to understand what was broken and how to fix it. The employees told me about a culture of fear, about how Richard had created an environment where people were afraid to speak up, afraid to challenge ideas, afraid to admit mistakes, about how the best people had left because they couldn't stand working there anymore, about how those who stayed felt trapped or defeated. The clients told me about declining quality, about projects that were delivered late or incomplete, about feeling like they weren't a priority, about considering switching to other firms. It was worse than I'd realized. I brought in the leadership team ID built at Tours Consulting. David Chen became my coup. Sarah had left Harmon Associates to join me, became head of operations. We promoted several strong performers from within Harmon Associates into leadership roles, and we got to work. We started by rebuilding trust. We implemented transparent communication, regular all-hands meetings, open door policies, anonymous feedback systems. We changed the evaluation and promotion systems to reward actual performance instead of politics. We fixed compensation, bringing salaries in line with market rates and adding performance bonuses tied to client satisfaction. We invested in training and development, and slowly, very slowly, things started to improve. People had been thinking about leaving decided to stay. A few people had left came back. We started hiring again, bringing in new talent, but the financial pressure was relentless. We were carrying significant debt from the acquisition. We needed to grow revenue while also investing in fixing the company. It was a difficult balance. There were months when I wasn't sure we'd make payroll. Nights when I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in a panic, running numbers in my head. Moments when I thought I'd made a catastrophic mistake, but we kept pushing forward. And about 8 months in, something shifted. One of our longtime clients, one that had been on the verge of leaving, renewed their contract. Not only renewed it, but expanded it. We've noticed the difference, their CEO told me. The quality is back, the communication is better. This feels like the Harmon Associates we used to work with. That was the first real sign that what we were doing was working. Other clients started noticing too. We won 2 new major accounts, then 3 more. Revenue started climbing. By the end of the first year, we were profitable again. Not hugely profitable, but sustainable. We were going to survive. Around the same time, I started hearing things about Richard, had joined a competitor, a smaller consulting firm that was trying to break into our market. Had taken a few clients with him. People he had relationships with. It stung a little, but not as much as I expected. ID learned something important over that first year. Revenge, the kind ID fantasized about for so long, wasn't actually about destroying someone else. It was about proving to yourself that you weren't defined by what they did to you, that you could build something better, that you could rise above it. Firing Richard had been satisfying in the moment, sure, but the real satisfaction came from watching the company improve, from seeing employees smile again, from hearing clients say they trusted us, from knowing that we were building something worthwhile. That's what actually mattered. Year 2 was about consolidation and growth. We continued improving operations, refining our processes, building our culture. We opened a new office, hired 50 more people, doubled our revenue. I paid off a significant chunk of the acquisition debt. The private equity firm that had invested was happy. Employees were happy, clients were happy, and I was happy. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Richard Brennan, but because I'd built something I was proud of, something that mattered. In the spring of year 2, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Michael, it's Richard." I was quiet for a moment. "Richard, this is unexpected." "Yeah, I'm sure. Listen, do you have a few minutes to talk about what?" "I'd rather do this in person. Can we meet for coffee?" I thought about saying no, but curiosity got the better of me. Sure, when we met at a neutral coffee shop the next day. Richard looked different, older, tired. We ordered coffee and sat down. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "What's this about?" He took a breath. I wanted to apologize. I wasn't expecting that. For what? For how I treated you, for firing you the way I did, for blaming you for my mistakes, for everything. I didn't know what to say. "I've spent the last 2 years at another firm," he continued, "and I've had a lot of time to think about my career, about the choices I've made, about the kind of leader I've been. He stared into his coffee. I wasn't good at it, Michael. I wasn't a good leader. I let my ego get in the way. I made things personal when they should have been professional, and I hurt a lot of people in the process. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better, and because I've watched what you've done with Harmon Associates, how you've turned it around, the culture you've built, and it made me realize what I could have done differently. Are you asking for your job back? He laughed, a sad sound. No, God, no. I know that ship has sailed. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong about you, about a lot of things. We talked for another hour about leadership, about mistakes, about what we'd both learned. It was strange, sitting there with the person I'd spent years resenting, having a civil conversation. As we were leaving, Richard said one more thing. For what it's worth, I'm glad you bought the company. I'm glad it's in good hands, thank you. Take care, Michael. You too, Richard. I walked back to my office thinking about that conversation, about forgiveness and growth and whether people can really change. I didn't know if Richard had truly changed or if he was just going through a moment of reflection, but it didn't matter. Because I realized I'd already moved on. He didn't have power over me anymore, not my emotions, not my career, not my life. I'd taken all that back, not by destroying him, but by building something better. 3 years after the acquisition, Harmon Associates was thriving. We'd grown to over 200 employees across 5 offices. We'd won industry awards, been recognized as one of the best places to work in our city. Our revenue had tripled from where it was when I bought the company, and we'd paid off all the acquisition debt. I owned a successful company, a company that did work I was proud of, that treated people well, that had a positive reputation. I'd achieved everything I'd set out to do. But more importantly, I'd become someone different in the process. Not bitter, not consumed by revenge, just focused on building something meaningful. One day, I was cleaning out my desk and found something. The separation agreement from when Richard had fired me. I'd kept it all these years, though I wasn't sure why. I read through it one more time. Employee agrees to release company from any and all claims. Employee acknowledges that termination was for legitimate business reasons. All the legal language that had made me feel so small and powerless, and I realized something. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need to hold on to that anger, that resentment, that desire for revenge, because I'd already won. Not by destroying Richard, but by proving that his judgment of me was wrong, that I was capable of more than had ever given me credit for. That success isn't about tearing others down, it's about building something worthwhile. I shredded the agreement. And I went back to work, because that's what really mattered, not the past, the future, what I would build next. Who I would help, what legacy I would leave. Gerald Harmon passed away about 6 months later. He was 77. Had been able to enjoy a few years of retirement knowing his company was in good hands. I spoke at his funeral. Talked about what had built, what had meant to the industry, what had taught me about leadership and integrity. And I meant every word. After the funeral, Gerald's lawyer gave me a letter. Gerald had written it a few months before he died, with instructions to deliver it to me after his passing. I opened it that night, alone in my office. Dear Michael, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I got a few good years to enjoy retirement, but who knows? I wanted to write this while I still could, to tell you something I should have said years ago. I was wrong about Richard. I gave him too much power, too much trust, too much benefit of the doubt, and in doing so, I allowed him to hurt people like you who deserved better. I Should have listened when you came to me with concerns. I should have investigated. I should have been a better steward of my own company. I'm sorry for that, but I want you to know how proud I am of what you've done. You didn't just buy a company, you saved it. You restored what I'd built and made it even better. That's the legacy I'd hoped for but wastes. Sure I'd see. Thank you for that. And thank you for proving that integrity and hard work still matter. The world needs more people like you. Take care of my company, take care of the people who work there, and build something extraordinary. With gratitude and respect, Gerald. I read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. And I made a promise to myself. I would honor his trust. I would build something extraordinary, not for revenge, not to prove anything to anyone, but because it was the right thing to do, because it mattered, because that's who I wanted to be. It's been 5 years since I bought Harmon Associates, 9.5 years since Richard fired me. The company is doing better than ever. We're profitable, growing, respected in our industry. The people who work here tell me they love what we've built. The clients tell me they trust us, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But the question I get asked most often is whether it was worth it. Whether buying the company and firing Richard gave me the closure I needed. And the honest answer is complicated. Yes, there was satisfaction in proving Richard wrong, in showing him that I wasn't the failure he'd made me out to be. But that satisfaction was fleeting. What lasted, what really mattered, was everything that came after. Building something meaningful, creating opportunities for others, treating people with respect, doing work that made a difference. That's what gave me closure, not revenge, growth. Richard is still out there somewhere, working at another firm. I hear about him occasionally through mutual connections. I don't wish him ill. I don't think about him much at all anymore. Because my story stopped being about him a long time ago. It became about me, about who I wanted to be, about what kind of leader, what kind of person I wanted to become. And that's a story I'm still writing. Sometimes late at night, when I'm alone in my office, I think about that young analyst I used to be. 26 years old, full of ambition, working 70-hour weeks, believing that hard work would be rewarded. And I think about how naive he was, how much he had to learn about politics and ego, and how unfair the world can be. But I also think about how resilient he was, how he refused to give up when everything fell apart, how he built something from nothing, how he turned pain into purpose, and I'm grateful to him, because without that pain, without that betrayal, without that moment when everything fell apart, I never would have become who I am now. I never would have built what I've built. I never would have learned what really matters. So was it worth it? The betrayal, the struggle, the years of anger and planning and debt and stress. I still don't have a simple answer, but I know this. I'm proud of who I've become. I'm proud of what we've built. And I wouldn't change it, not the pain, not the struggle, not even Richard, because it all led me here, to a place where I can look at myself in the mirror and know that I did things the right way, that I treated people with dignity, that I built something that matters, and in the end, that's better than any revenge could ever be.